Coming up on this week's episode of TechSnap, it's great to be a malware author as long as you're selling to the government. Bypassing PayPal's two-factor authentication is way easier than you might think. And then it's a great big batch of your questions, our answers, and much, much more on this week's episode of TechSnap. Hi, everyone, and welcome to TechSnap. This is episode 169 of Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly Systems Network and Administration podcast. We stream this episode live on June 26th, 2014. This episode is brought to you by our three fine sponsors, Ting, DigitalOcean, and IX Systems. I'll tell you more about those great sponsors as this here show goes on. Our live stream, why, that's powered by the incredible Scale Engine over at scaleengine.com. You've got to go check that out. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, the admin, the tech, and the teacher, Mr. Alan Jude. Hey there, Alan.
Hey, Chris. Everybody, thanks for watching.
Hey, Alan. I feel like I just saw you. I feel like... Yeah, we're actually doing... All right, a little secret. We are doing... This is our second episode this week. Back-to-back episodes. It's getting really warm in the JB1 studios because all of the lights have been on for a while, and this place does not cool down overnight. That's like... And then, Alan, on top of that, I've put in all of this sound insulation, which, holds the heat in.
Is actual insulation too?
It turns out it's actual insulation. But I shouldn't complain because I know it's much warmer up where you're at today.
Well, it's just funny because you used to complain about how cold it was in your garage.
I know. Now, why you're going somewhere? Where are you going that we're pre-taping for?
Cambridge, the BSD Cambridge Dev Summit, which is an invite-only 4-day event that'll be at the Cambridge University Computer Lab in England.
Oh, very cool, Alan.
Yes.
That sounds pretty nice. Well, we've got...
my first Dev Summit officially as a developer.
Oh, congratulations.
Well, because I got my bit between the Developer Summit and the conference, BSDCan, which is the last conference.
Man, you guys eat so good at the regular conferences. I can only imagine the more select conferences how good you guys
eat. The other interesting thing is the voting for the core team ended yesterday. And the results will be announced next Wednesday.
Oh.
Or maybe possibly before then.
So what could that mean, Alan?
Well, it could mean that I was elected to the core team, or we'll find out which 9 people out of the 21 people that ran in the election were elected to the FreeBSD core team.
So when would we be finding that out?
Next Wednesday. Probably on BSD Now.
Oh my gosh. That is, and then we'll be recording the next day an episode of TechSnap.
Yes.
Oh, I can't wait to find out. Well, good luck, Alan. Yep. And if you win, I'm going to assume there was some sort of voter fraud, though. I'm just saying. Just no offense.
Yeah, well, because when I entered the election, I had been a member of the project for 10 days.
Yeah. That's okay. Maybe people just like TechSnap a lot. BSD Now.
The election is only once every 2 years, so it just happened to land right after I got my
I see. Well, that's pretty good timing. Well, while we're on the topic of BSD and community, and we got a big show to get into, we should probably thank our first sponsor this week. That's the folks over at IX Systems. And here's what I want you to do. Go over to ixsystems.com/TechSnap. That lets them know you heard about it right here on the TechSnap program. And it's a way for you to say thank you for supporting one of my favorite shows. And also gives you an opportunity to find out more about IX Systems. IX Systems has systems powered by the incredible Intel Xeon processors. They have a guide available for you to download that makes the case for using a vendor like IX Systems. And I think on top of that, too, it's worth checking out when you're considering IX Systems, their existing clients list. A hell of a list here. They've got everybody from Firefox, Sony, the U.S. Army, TiVo, Dr. Phil, the FreeBSD Foundation, Symantec, Juniper, VMware, Wise, Adobe. I mean, this list is this is amazing.
Yep.
And I believe Scale Engine's on there too.
Yes. And the other thing is just the range of products, right? Because on top of the high-end servers and the Xeons, they also have low-power systems based on Intel's new Atom server processor.
What is that? That's a very fancy. Is that your doorbell, Alan?
This is, sorry.
Okay. You go get that, Alan. I'll finish telling about IX Systems because I am actually an IX Systems customer myself. Now, I don't have the big, fancy, swanky servers like Alan does. He's got the really high-end systems, but I've actually been incredibly happy with their FreeNAS Mini. Go over to ixsystems.com. They've got a brand new, recently redesigned FreeNAS Mini. It's even slicker than the model I've got. But we use our FreeNAS Mini for serious production here at the Jupiter Broadcasting Network. It runs the back-end storage infrastructure for our files, for our network. All of the automated tasks that we need to have happen to keep our production pipeline going all happen on our IX Systems FreeNAS Mini. And one of the things that I can very confidently say now, as somebody who's been through the process of reloading the operating system, because we decided, what can we throw on this hardware? Let's take a very clear-eyed approach at our storage server. What can we throw on there? We tried out Ubuntu. We even tried out Windows Server 2008. We went back to FreeNAS. And the way that IX System has implemented FreeNAS on this is so slick. They include a USB module that we were able to boot from, choose that image, and it restored everything right back to where it was. And because the ZFS array was completely protected, stored on a different set of hard drives, when we brought that operating system back, we immediately had access to all of our data all over again. And it took just a matter of minutes. No problem. I was just telling about my FreeNAS Mini while you were gone.
Ah, cool.
So go over to ixsystems.com/TechSnap, see why I chose them to run our storage backend, see why Alan chooses them to run Scale Engine, and see why they might be. And your house, yeah, which is...
Yes, I have they built me a nice little short depth router, low power, quiet, 4 gigabit ports, works great. And then they built me an awesome storage server here. So, whether I needed a little router, a little storage server, a big storage server, or a huge storage server, they had everything I needed.
It was very awesome. And it's the same, it's been my experience as well. ixsystems.com/TechSnap. Check them out, you guys. That we really recommend. I can't recommend another hardware vendor any stronger. Exactly. Okay, Alan, our first story kind of dips into the PayPal area, doesn't it? Something you might be a little familiar with. What's going on?
Indeed. There's a flaw has been found in the mobile app for PayPal that allows you to bypass two-factor authentication.
Womp womp.
So researchers at Duo Security have produced a proof of concept app. So it's actually a replacement for the PayPal app. That is able to bypass the two-factor authentication requirement when using the PayPal mobile app and allow an attacker to transfer funds out of your PayPal account using only the username and password without needing to provide the one-time password. So the PayPal bug was actually discovered by an outside researcher, Dan Saltman, who then asked Duo Security to help validate it and to communicate with the PayPal security team. And it says, PayPal has been aware of the issue since March and has implemented a workaround, but isn't planning to deploy the full patch until the end of July. But they've made it so at least people can't do this for now.
Okay, that's something.
So currently, the PayPal mobile app does not support two-factor authentication, meaning that if you have two-factor authentication enabled on your PayPal account and you try to use the mobile app, it'll say, sorry, you have two-factor, you can't use the mobile app.
Wow.
The exploit tricks the mobile app into ignoring that two-factor authentication flag and allowing the mobile app to work anyway. So basically, the way it works is when you log in, the PayPal will send back a flag saying, hey, this account has two-factor authentication, and the app would send you back to the login page. But it would actually verify the username and password and give you the session token, right? So the researchers built their version of the mobile app and just made it ignore that two-factor authentication flag.
Of course. Why wouldn't you?
Right? And then once they have the session token, they can call the other APIs and do things like transfer funds.
Oh, right. Of course. It's all about that token.
So yeah, by using an app that allowed them to basically do a man-in-the-middle attack between the PayPal app and the server, they just switched a true to a false, and all of a sudden now the mobile app works and bypasses all the two-factor authentication.
Yeah. Huh. And
it turns out the check to prevent two-factor authentication enabled accounts from logging in via the mobile API is in the app, not in the server side.
I was just going to speculate that.
Yeah. And worse, that it appears that it's possible to access their system without actually using the second factor, which kind of defeats the purpose of having a second factor. Yeah, so once they logged in and got a valid session ID, with the Proof of Concept Act, they could use the regular API to transfer funds and send the money to some other account without needing the second factor.
I was just talking on the live stream about how I almost feel like security in the age of mobile has taken a huge hit because it's so hard to get right on mobile. I mean, I don't know if this is... I can't really blame this on that particular problem, but it does seem to be endemic of an overall issue. This isn't the first app that I've seen where they implement two-factor authentication at the application level. I think this is maybe the most widespread and important one, but it's not the first time.
Right, and this one they didn't implement two-factor in the app, and so, but apparently they're not enforcing two-factor on the server.
Right,
it's just kind of, the interface says, "Oh, right, you need two-factor, and we don't do that, so you can't log in here." Instead of the server saying, "Sorry, you can't log in because you didn't provide the second factor." Yeah. And then so there's a quote here. There are plenty of cases of PayPal passwords being compromised in giant database dumps. There's also been a giant rise in PayPal-related phishing, right? So lots of PayPal-related phishing. That happens all the time, right? Fake emails from PayPal saying, oh, your account's going to be suspended if you don't go here and fill out this form and stuff. Or just, people use the same password for their PayPal as they use for other stuff.
Right. And
like, say, maybe their eBay account, which is the reason they set up a PayPal account in the first place. Those two have the same password, and they, the eBay compromise meant that somebody has all these PayPal accounts. And now, even the people that have two-factor authentication, so weren't that worried about it, turns out you could bypass that. But anyway, so PayPal's implemented a fix that should prevent this from happening, and then they will have a better fix come out in July.
Very good.
Again, you understand PayPal's reluctance to roll out an emergency update, right? They did a small emergency update that only fixes the problem and stops the exploit. And then they'll do a proper fix, which involves like rewriting their authentication system, I imagine. And they want to test that before they roll it out.
That's a big change.
Yeah. You wouldn't want to not be able to log into PayPal tomorrow either, would you?
No, very much not. Yeah.
It's not clear yet how big of a bug bounty this will attract from PayPal. Since Duo wasn't the guys that found it, but they're the guys that reported it and managed it, I don't know how they end up splitting the money or whatever with the guy that actually found it. But that guy came to them and asked them to do it. So,
and they have a video of it happening. They captured it. A link in the show notes for that. I showed a little bit while you were talking about it, about the app they made.
I didn't see the video. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, that's becoming like a thing too. It's like, you want a little more publicity, make a video to go with it and put it on Vimeo. Just like they're always using Vimeo too, because like if they put it on YouTube, it gets pulled down, I guess. Well,
also Vimeo doesn't have pre-roll ads, right?
Probably. Yeah, I don't know. I think they have I think they might have a pro account that does. I don't know.
Right. Or specifically, it won't have related videos at the end that might point at something you didn't want to show on your website.
True. Yeah.
That's why a lot of people use Scale Engine, because they don't want the ads you get with PayPal or
YouTube.
YouTube.
Yeah. There you go. Scale Engine, a way to solve that as well. Maybe what you got to do, Alan, is capitalize on all of these guys posting their exploits on video. Just get them to go to Scale Engine as the place to host. Sure. All right. Any other thoughts on that story? No? Okay.
No, that's about it for that story.
Well,
but it's definitely interesting.
While we're talking about hosting, why not check out DigitalOcean.com, another sponsor of the TechSnap program. What is DigitalOcean? Well, they're a simple cloud hosting provider dedicated to offering the most intuitive and easy way to spin up a cloud server. Users can create a cloud server in about 55 seconds, and pricing plans start at only $5. $5 per month. That gets you 512 megabytes of RAM, a 20 gigabyte SSD, one blazing fast CPU, and a freaking terabyte of transfer for $5 a month. Plus, if you use our promo code SNAPJULY when you check out, you'll save $10 because you'll get a $10 credit. You can try out that $5 rig for 2 months. And my friends, never fear, because DigitalOcean has data center locations in New York, San Francisco, Singapore, and Amsterdam. They even offer some private networking, which is great if you have some back-end database servers or something like that, and you can have a front-end web server. It doesn't count against your transfer. And their interface is simple. Nice. I know, right? Especially for like a database and a web server. The control panel is awesome, too. Power users can replicate that control panel with their API. So when you're managing your systems, if you get more than just a few, there's community-made applications that take advantage of that API, but I've been told that the API is so straightforward that it really doesn't take much to set up your own set of scripts to make things automatic. The other thing that's really cool, and keep this in mind when you're using the promo code SNAPJULY, is DigitalOcean also offers hourly pricing. When you're looking at their pricing plan, just click the little toggle and it switches over to hourly. Think about how far you could get with a $10 credit at these hourly rates. You could try. The great thing about this is with their droplet system, you could create a droplet, have it on standby, fire it up when you're ready to do the testing, have people bang on it for a little while, and then shut it down.
Yeah, or even if it's, you have a certain amount of load all the time, so you need the one server, but during the busy time, you need a second server.
Absolutely, turn it on.
You can spool it up and only run it on for those hours, and with the API, you can turn them on and off as you need.
And with that SSD back storage, you're going to have good performance. That disk I/O is going to be nice and fast. They've got tier 1 bandwidth. They've got amazing hardware. They're sitting on top of KVM virtualization, and they have some of the best hardware providers in the business. Go over to DigitalOcean.com. Use the promo code SNAPJULY when you check out to get that $10 credit. And don't forget, when you use that promo code SNAPJULY, it's a way to tell DigitalOcean that you appreciate them supporting the TechSnap program and keeping us going. SNAPJULY, and a big thank you to DigitalOcean for sponsoring the TechSnap program. I got to tell you, I love my DigitalOcean droplet.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let's talk about the hacking team. What the heck is the hacking team, Alan?
So Hacking Team is actually an Italian company that develops legal spyware used by law enforcement and other government agencies all over the world.
It's legal because they're the ones buying it?
Yeah. Okay. Basically, they're a consulting company that builds spyware for governments.
All right.
And law enforcement agencies.
Okay.
They originally came to light in 2011 when WikiLeaks released basically a PDF that they had slideshow they had given to some governments to try to convince them to buy their software. And it, so if you pull up that PDF, you can see, if you scroll down past the scans of highlighted newspaper articles, you get to their actual PDF, and you can see they're advertising their offensive security products.
I'm downloading it right now from wikileaks.org. It probably just showed up on some NSA tracker.
So the software bills itself as offensive security, allowing law enforcement agencies to remotely monitor and control infected machines. So they install this on your machine. They can eavesdrop on your Skype. They can take over your computer, access your files, do all this stuff. The software claims to be undetectable. On one of the slides there, they talk about how it doesn't modify any existing files and no new files show up. So I don't know if that means it has a rootkit or what. However, in July of 2012, some samples of a version of it for Mac were sent to the antivirus vendors, and they all just made definitions for it to detect different parts of it.
Okay.
So it's not completely undetected, but it's still not that much is known about it. And so Kaspersky has been doing a lot of research in it over the last 2 years into what it is and how it works. But what prompted this article is that Kaspersky released their new results just this week, where they've managed to track down the command and control servers used by the Hacking Team software. The countries with the most command and control servers for Hacking Team are the USA, Kazakhstan, Ecuador, the UK, and Canada. So you see some totalitarian governments mixed in with, Kazakhstan and Ecuador. See what I did there?
Yeah, I did.
So it's not clear if all those command and control servers located in those countries are for the exclusive use of law enforcement agencies in those countries.
Yeah.
Right? Just because the server's in the U.S. doesn't mean it's definitely used by U.S. law enforcement.
Right.
Although some of those servers were running on IP addresses who is backed to the government.
Are you serious?
And so those ones probably are. But, if you're some company or some country that doesn't quite have the same internet infrastructure, it's usually cheaper to rent a server in the States. Although then you risk the problems of the servers being seized for intelligence or whatever. But that's less of an issue if you're law enforcement and more of an issue if you're doing intelligence, right? If you're spying on people, that's one thing. If you're doing law enforcement, then, other countries are less interested in interfering with that or stealing that data per se. But they break that stuff down, and there's lots of information in the two articles on securelist.com showing what the malware is and what it does. The new article focuses a lot on the the mobile malware. So they, in the slides, which are originally from 2008, they talk about being able to, infect a BlackBerry or something, and then they start talking about, they're like, oh, in 2009 we'll be able to hack Symbian. But the research that is on from Kaspersky now is talking about Android and iOS and Windows Phone. And I said, although it's rarely seen, the mobile malware is out there and being used. The reason it's probably so rarely seen is that, law enforcement agencies have to actively infect a specific phone to use it, right? They're not going to go out there and try to put it on everybody's phone because that'll give away all the secrets.
Well, they're not going to announce to the press how they did it either when they catch the bad guy.
Exactly. So they have a breakdown here of some of the things that the malware can do.
Okay.
So apparently their malware for iOS only works on jailbroken iOS devices. So you just assume that criminals will have jailbroken their phone.
Yeah, maybe.
Anyway, some of the things the malware can do on a phone are control the Wi-Fi, GPS, and GPRS radios, record voice calls, extract emails, SMS, and MMS messages, list the files stored on the phone, extract or modify cookies from the browser, get the list of visited URLs and any cached web pages that are on the phone, the address book and call history from the phone, notes and calendar, the clipboard, a list of all the apps installed, make changes to the SIM and stuff.
SMS message interception?
Yep. Live microphone. So they can just turn the microphone on and record your phone in your pocket.
That's great.
Take pictures with the camera. And they have support for WhatsApp, Skype, and Viber for extracting the chats out of those.
Oh, good, good. I'm glad.
And they also have a keylogger that uses lib injection and they can take screenshots of your phone as well. So if they don't support the app, they can just take a bunch of screenshots.
And look, Alan, they have another Vimeo video.
Yeah. And then the Android version is using some commercial obfuscation software. It makes it a lot harder to analyze the malware for Android. But what they were able to do was tell that a certain list of apps is specifically targeted. mm.tencent.com. I'm not sure which that one is. I forget. Android.gm, Android.calendar, Facebook, some Japanese Android thing, and Google Talk for Android. So a lot of this focuses on wiretapping, right? They want to listen in on your Skype or Google Talk calls and your SMSs and WhatsApp and Viber messages and so on.
So is this PDF like a here's what we can do and why you want to spend money on us kind of?
The 2008 one is, yes, this is their sales pitch to governments and law enforcement agencies.
Here's basically all the things you can spy on.
Yeah. And then this article that we're talking about from this week is more what they managed to reverse engineer out of the phone malware, because we only have that PDF from 2008 because of WikiLeaks.
Ah, right.
Right. We don't have what their 2014 catalog looks like.
Right. Okay. Right.
We just know what they could do in 2008. So obviously the software's got more sophisticated since then.
Yeah.
The article also details about how mobile phones get infected. The main one is, if they infect your computer, which they have a bunch of ways of doing that were covered in that PDF file. Then when you connect your phone to your computer, it can infect the phone silently without you knowing that that's happening. In addition, they also managed to come up with screenshots of an iOS infector that they wrote that law enforcement agencies use. So, you get arrested or whatever, and they take your phone, and they hook it up to their computer, and they infect it, and then they give your phone back to you. And then they get all the stuff they need to get.
But it's not hacking when they do it. It's law enforcement.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Sounds like hacking to me, Alan, so I'm glad you clarified that.
It seems currently most of the mobile infection requires physical access to your phone or you plugging it into a computer or something. Yeah. Although you can see them doing this with those charging stations and stuff too, right?
Yeah.
But again, with this one being targeted at law enforcement, they're mostly going after specific people rather than trying to infect as many people as they can.
Okay.
Because they're trying to, the more people that see this virus, the better chance defenses will be worked up against it.
Right.
So they want to use it as sparingly as they can.
Keep it on the DL.
Yep.
Yeah. And, you mentioned the USB ports. There was a story just this past week about somebody who managed to hack a phone by tricking somebody to plug into a USB charger, thinking they were getting power. And of course,
usually you are even getting power.
Well, yeah, exactly.
That's why we've seen those USB condom devices that disable some of the pins and only let power through, not data.
Yep. That might not be a bad idea to pick up.
I needed one of those on the airplane. The USB port on the Air Canada planes in the system that gives you power, so my phone charges off it fine. Mm-hmm. But the Kindle tries to link with the computer that's in there, and so it's like eject the device on the computer in order to charge the Kindle. It's like, yeah, but it's a touchscreen kiosk computer that I can't eject the USB device.
Stop mounting my file system.
Yeah, well, it was so much of that is the Kindle wouldn't let me say, hey, just take power off this USB port.
Yeah. Huh. Interesting. Chat room has some interesting thoughts on this, too. I don't really know what to make of it because it seems like to me the line between lawful interception and hacking is essentially nullified with stuff like this. Basically,
it depends if they had to get a warrant to install this on your phone.
But it seems like from the developer standpoint, what determines if you're a hacker is who you sell the code to, not what the code does, but who it's sold to, right? And because this quote unquote legitimate software is probably taking advantage of the same exploits that illegitimate software does.
List the CVs and stuff in the PDFs.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know. It just gives me this weird, unsettled feeling about it. Kind of like.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't like it, Alan, and it feels like it's the kind of arms race that leads to doom in a way. But whatever. Yeah. It's interesting to see that. So guys, go check out A. There's a video, and B. That PDF is pretty interesting too, and Alan has links to all of that in the show notes. Any other thoughts on that?
Including, I have the article from like a year ago when they were talking about the hacking team. And yeah, there's more information than we could fit in the show. So go check it out.
Yeah, it's a good read. All right. Well, before we go on, I want to tell you about Ting.com. Go over to techsnap.ting.com. That'll take $25 off your first device. Or if you've got a device that's compatible with the Ting network, they'll also give you a $25 credit. If you're like me, that paid for more than my first month of service. Here's what's great about Ting. No contract, no early termination fee, and you only pay for what you use. Ting also will help you get out of your current contract. You can go to ting.com/ETF to find out more about that. They'll pay up to $75 per line that you have to get canceled. Once you move over to Ting, you're just paying for what you use. So you're going to save a ton of money. Try out their savings calculator to see more about that. Alan and I just did one last week, and it was like $2,000 over the period of 2 years. It's just absolutely nuts. Plus, Ting has no-hold customer service. You just call them at 1-855-TING-FTW anytime between 8 a.m. or 8 p.m. Eastern, and a real person answers the phone. And one of the things I really like about...
the most important thing is that the person that answers the phone is Canadian.
That's very true. That's very true, Alan. And one of the things I like a lot about Ting is their blog, because they're very transparent. And one of the questions you might have is like, well, wait a minute. If you have no-hold customer service, how the hell can that scale? Well, Ting thought you might be wondering that, so they answered that question.
Cam M asks, assuming continued growth of your customer base, do you plan on keeping your no-hold policy for customer service calls indefinitely? If so, how do you plan to accomplish that goal?
Oh, that's a great question. So to answer the question, yes, we plan on keeping it. The secret to making sure that we answer the phone and answer emails in a timely manner really comes down to us knowing how many new customers we're going to be signing up in any given period. So daily, weekly, we're always looking at what happened with new sales yesterday, and then making sure that our projections are updated to take all of that into account, so we can tell going forward, you know, is July going to be busier than June, and is June busier than May? But I guess the important part of that answer is that it's new customers that are asking questions. How do I sign up? Which devices are supported? How do I activate? Where's my device? You know, all those sorts of things. The existing customers don't ask a ton of questions. So we could have probably 10 times as many customers as we have today, but as long as we're staffed to take our growth projections into account, then we'll be able to answer the phones in this way.
There you go. That makes sense to me. Go to techsnap.ting.com to get started.
Yeah, like I said, most of the support stuff they have is going to come from people that aren't even a Ting customer yet,
right?
Or people that have been a Ting customer for like 2 weeks or less.
And
after that point, you start using their web control panel, and you're like, I never need to call them again. I can just do everything myself. On
the dashboard
website.
Rocks. Help.ting.com rocks. The community forums rock. I was actually able to get my Ubuntu touch phone up and running on the Ting network just by reading the community forums. I didn't have to call anybody. And now I'm only paying for what I use. I have no contract, and they have an awesome dashboard. So go over to techsnap.ting.com. And a really big thanks to Ting for sponsoring the TechSnap program. Love it. And that dashboard, it rocks. And you know me, Alan, I'm now running 3 operating systems on my Nexus 5. That's how cray I am. I got Firefox OS, I got Ubuntu Touch, and I got Android 4.4.4, I think. And it's like the latest Android. It's pretty cool. Okay, Mr. Jude, is there anything else we want to cover in the news segment?
Nope.
All right, then you know what that means. It's time for the TechSnap feedback. Thanks for sending your emails to techsnap@jupiterbroadcasting.com or pop in that contact link at the top of the Jupiter Broadcasting website, or even better, starting a thread in our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Our first email this week comes in from Thomas, and he's kind of following up on a thread that we've been touching on over a couple of weeks. He says, what's the point of sudo? Why disabling root login when you can do everything with the sudo command? How can I administer a remote computer if root login is disabled for security purposes and then I have to do everything through sudo anyways? It would be the same if my account got compromised or if the root account gets compromised, isn't it? Isn't it even more work to do multiple things that require root, so you have to continually keep doing sudo? Thanks for the clarification. Keep on with the big show. Best regards, Thomas.
Well, the first thing is he needs to learn about sudo -s.
Yeah, buddy.
Which just gives you a shell as root, so that every command you do is now as root. The biggest reason to do sudo to not allow root login is because people don't know what your username is, right? So when the brute forces are happening, they're trying the username root, and you just make that never possible to log in as root. and then it has to be a certain username. The other thing is, if you have more than one administrator, you want each person to log in from their account and have to use sudo to get to root, so you know who was in and doing stuff at that time.
Mm-hmm.
If everybody's using root and sharing a password or using SSH keys, it's hard to tell who is doing what. Now, there is a module for newer versions of OpenSSH where you can log which key was used to log in, so that if you have multiple people that do share an account, you can know which key was used to log. Or even, me, I have a key from my phone, a key from my laptop, and a key from my desktop, and I could tell which one of those was used to log in.
Right.
But in general, you'd never want to share a username. So there's one reason, but mostly you just never, ever, ever allow login as root. It's the default for a reason. And login is your account and sudo root. And that still does provide more protection because now they need to know a username and a password.
Right.
They already know the username. And it just solves many problems.
And I think it's probably worth pointing out that once you're in the habit of using sudo and the sudoers file, you can then later on restrict what you can do with sudo. So that's important.
So that was when I just read the headline of the question, I thought, what's the difference between that and just using sudo and getting a shell?
I think he's probably assuming you sudo everything. Yeah.
Right. So sudo, one of the things it lets you do is allow certain people to do only certain commands.
Right.
Like, for example, I have a user with almost no privileges, and the only thing it can do is reload the name server database. So update the zone file. So, this user can log in, edit this text file, and then cause the daemon that runs as root and reads that file to update.
Yeah,
and that's it.
I've used it too for so that way maybe the help desk technician can get in and rerun the password command and set user passwords, but they can't do anything else with that account.
Yep. Or I've done it so that a certain user could mount and unmount a file system.
Perfect.
Like a backup system or whatever, or things like that. But yeah, in general, sudo wasn't designed to allow every command. It's something it can do, but that's not what it was designed to do. I put a link in the show notes. My friend Michael Lucas wrote a book called Sudo Mastery, where he explains how to use sudo properly.
Perfect.
Or I guess he said it's correctly pronounced sudo.
Well,
or something like
sudo. Super user do.
I say sudo, but he says
sudo.
The correct pronunciation is sudo.
Gotcha.
Or sudo. It's sudo. It says.
It's hard not to say sudo though because it's super user do.
Because it's exactly. That's what I say sudo, but he says the correct pronunciation is sudo.
It's like GIF, man. Once I've locked in one way, it's gonna be really hard.
GIF. Yeah. GIF will be spelled with the J and two F's.
Thank you. Anyways,
so in general, the main reason is just to prevent anyone else from ever being able to log in as root. And require them to know more stuff.
The cool thing about the sudoers file is you can set things based on group. You can say you can do these commands without a password, but if you want to execute this command, it's going to prompt you for a password. Like there's all kinds of...
You can change it so that either the password can be your password, or it can still require root's password,
right?
Or the target user's password.
I like that too.
And stuff like that. So, in that case, now you're requiring, either to log in as your regular user, you need a password or a key.
Right.
And then to sudo root, you need either that password, which you didn't use because you used the key, or a second password or something like that. And you do stuff like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that, sudo can log stuff and give you an accounting of what's available.
Thank you. I wanted to remember to mention that too, is there's the whole logging aspect of using sudo. So,
but yeah, it becomes a much bigger deal when you have more than one administrator on a machine and stuff like that.
And the machine's exposed to the web. And
yeah, but basically... just never, ever, ever allow login as root.
And even if you're doing it on your own home server, it's just, I always do this across all my boxes. It's just a good habit.
Right. And I admit that, yes, typing sudo in front of every command is a waste. That's what sudo -s is for.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. And some commands also will, like on Linux now, on Ubuntu and Arch specifically, because it's so common to use sudo instead of the actual root account, you can execute the command, and then once the command gets to a point that it needs super user privileges, it can initiate sudo for you as well at that point, which is... So it's one of those things where I think it's worth learning the behavior of using sudo so that way you understand how it works, even if it's a single machine.
It's very easy to do it wrong, so that's why I recommend Michael's book, where he gets really into the right recipes for doing it right.
And Alan has a link to that in the show notes. And if you have a production system where you guys are using sudo, especially with multiple people, woo! It's worth a read, it sounds like. All right, next email comes in from Chris. It says, hey guys, I have just got a DigitalOcean droplet, and I'm loving it. Thank you, Chris. He says, I have my own website running on there now, and I'm in the process of changing my email server over to my own domain. Attaboy. My question is, I have a WordPress site up and running, but would like to be able to send out emails, like, a contact form when somebody sends me an email or a new account creation email. How do I accomplish this? The server is Ubuntu 14.04, and I want to be able to send emails from like webmaster@mydomain.com. I don't want to have to receive mail or go into my own email hosting just to be able to send out emails from WordPress and other web apps. He says, thanks and keep up. Actually, he says, Jeep up. The great show.
Doesn't Ubuntu come with the mail transfer agent already installed?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe you could kind of just explain the idea of a mail transfer.
Yeah, okay. So, on FreeBSD anyway, SendMail is installed as part of the base system. So yeah, when you run the command, it will send the mail already. That's kind of built in. You shouldn't have to do anything specific. Now, he specifically talked about setting the sender address. That can require a little bit of configuration.
Yeah.
Generally, that would be set in your WordPress or whatever. But in your mail server configuration, there's usually rules saying that only root can spoof the from address. And so when WordPress tries to send an email, the mail server will brand the from address as like www-data at your hostname.
Right.
And then in your mail server config, whichever mail server's default on Ubuntu, I'm guessing Postfix, I don't know.
Yes.
There'll be basically a config parameter that lists the users who are allowed to spoof their from address. And if you just add the user, the PHP code runs as there, then they'll be able to do that. And WordPress will be sending the command. You might also have to set something in your php.ini. You can hard code it so every email from your server comes from that address, or you can leave that off and let, if you have multiple WordPress installs, each one can use its own email address for the from address. But in general, that should already be set up for you. The ability to inject mail into the local queue and have it be delivered.
So if it's not, in the show notes, I will link to a DigitalOcean guide to getting Postfix on Ubuntu 14.04 set up. They'll walk you through that. You might want to look into also a reverse MX record, so that way sites like Gmail and Comcast will accept your email.
Your other option is if the machine that's sending the mail isn't in a situation where it should be sending mail directly, because when you do the mail here, it's going to be your web server connecting out to people's email server and delivering the mail directly to them.
And this,
the other option is what's called Smart Host. Basically a setting you put in that the configuration there, so that when your system wants to send email, it will go to some other server and log into it and drop the mail off as if it was like Thunderbird or your desktop email client. So you can actually send the mail to your Gmail account.
Do you think that might be the better way for him to go?
It depends where the server is. If it's a proper web server in a clean IP space, then that should be fine.
Right.
But if it's running on his home connection, he probably wants to smart host through his Gmail or something.
He's got it on a droplet on DigitalOcean, so.
Oh well, then DigitalOcean's already clean, and that's fine.
Yeah, he'd probably be fine. Although even then, it might be worth looking at the Postfix Smart Host setup. It's not that hard to set up at all.
Yep.
But
it requires a mail server somewhere that's willing to accept your mail.
There is configs out there, though, for getting it to work through your Gmail account. I don't know how that works. Probably works fine. You probably just log into your...
but it requires putting your Gmail password in the config file.
Yeah.
So that's not always great.
Not ideal.
But obviously, you would probably just set up a dedicated Gmail just for the smart hosting.
I would think so. Okay, next email comes in from Mike, and he's got an interesting question about securing data. He says, hey, Alan and Chris, I've been looking into storing encrypted data in a database lately. He says, still not sure on MySQL or MongoDB, but I'm not sure if I could use GNU-PG or OpenSSL. Both will give me a symmetric AES 256 string, but there are quirks between each that make it hard to decide. GNU-PG is great for encrypting files, but when I want to encrypt a simple string, I get the GNU-PG header with each result, and there are line breaks in that string. When using OpenSSL, I find out that I can get encrypted strings shorter and without line breaks that could cause issues if stored in a DB database. There is also an issue of storing the key with GNU-PG. The public key and private keys are stored at the OS level. With OpenSSL, I generally find that I have to store the PEM file locally to encrypt and decrypt. From that perspective, GNU-PG would be a more secure in the key storage, but if the system is compromised, I could be affected either way. So what would you say is the preferred program for encrypting and decrypting these AES 256 strings for storage and retrieval in a database? OpenSSL has a black and blue eye with the Heartbleed attacks lately, but hopefully trust can be restored in the program and still offers great tools all around. Thanks again, Mike. So what do you think, Alan?
Right. Well, there's a couple different things. If you just want to do AES, it's built into MySQL. There's an AES 256 or at least 128 command where you provide it the string and the password.
Do you suppose it's data outside that he's trying?
I'm not sure. Now, you mentioned GNU-PG in a file. Normally, when you do a string, you're actually going to be doing some asymmetric encryption rather than symmetric. And so, yeah, he talked about GNU-PG having the header and stuff. And the biggest one is GNU-PG, especially when you're doing asymmetric, the blob of text is going to have to be big enough, a multiple of the key size. So if you have a 4096-bit key, your block of text is going to be pretty big. Plus, it's in binary and then base 64 encoded, so that expands it by 33% as well.
Okay.
Although there is a way to make it return the binary. Normally, it's what's called armored, which is when they make it text to make it safe to email. But there is a way to make it return the binary instead, if that's what you want to store in your database. The biggest advantage with GNU-PG is if you're using asymmetric like that, is you have one key to encrypt and one key to decrypt. So depending how you're using the data, maybe that's what you want.
That could be ideal.
That's how we do the credit cards at Scale Engine.
Right, sure.
The web server has the public key, and so users go to our website and they type in their credit card and we encrypt it and store it in the database. The server that users talk to has no access to the private key and can't decrypt the credit card numbers.
I like that. That's smart.
The decryption key, the private key, is on a pair of USB sticks that I have here at my office that I keep in the locked drawer and access them when I need to decrypt the credit cards once a month to run billing.
I like that a lot, and that might offer him a level of security that he's looking for.
Yeah, as opposed to AES-256 with just a password or with the PEM file like he was looking at there.
Yeah.
So that's the advantage when you want two separate keys, and you want to be able to restrict, certain people need to encrypt but not decrypt. And whereas if it's always symmetrical, if it's the same app that needs to encrypt and decrypt, then you're looking at the same, then symmetric is fine. And then, if the machine's compromised, the machine's compromised.
Yeah.
That's your problem.
Yeah. That's a big problem.
Yeah.
Well, Mike, I'd be really curious to hear what you end up doing and any more information.
It'd be interesting to look at like what your data is and the overhead and stuff.
I agree.
Because, when you're using asymmetric, you're using big public keys. So you're talking like 2048 or 4096-bit keys. With AES, you're looking at 128 or 256-bit keys with a password instead. And so depending on the size of your original data, that could be a lot more bloat. But, it's also... if it's ASCII armored like GPT normally is, although you can make it not be, ASCII armored will compress very well, so you can optionally compress it as well.
Very good. If you'd like to get your question answered on the TechSnap program, go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com, click that contact link, and then choose TechSnap from the drop-down. Then it's like you got a systems, you got a network, you got an administration question, maybe something about storage, something about security, send it in. We'll answer. It's like free consulting service right here on the TechSnap program. And we could use your questions for episode 170 next week. So please send them in. But Alan, with the feedback all done, that means it's time for the TechSnap Roundup. Welcome to the TechSnap Roundup. Yeah, that's what that crazy music means. Now, the Roundup are stories that just didn't quite fit at the top of the show, but we still want to talk about them and give you some links to follow up on your own after the show. And a lot of these links came from our subreddit over at links.techsnap.tv. Alan, our first story kind of has me shaking my head. Google has started removing search results under Europe's new right to be forgotten law. And this is just blowing up. I don't know if you've heard about this.
I guess my biggest question is, how does Google decide who has the right for the information to be deleted?
Well, there is
if the information points to my website, or if it's the information's about me.
There's a removal request process that people go through that justifies the reason for asking for the removal, and then Google reviews those requests. And then
I guess my question is, what information do I have the right to ask them to remove?
I don't know.
If it's somebody writing something about me on their website, do I have the right to do that, or is it only sites that I own? And
here's
do I have
an
to
example.
Prove that I owned it?
One of the first links Google removed from its search index was one about a newspaper advertisement from 1998 mentioning a long-resolved debt of an individual. And what happened was, when you were searching for that individual, this old bit of information would come up, and that individual thought that was essentially defamation and made them look bad and wanted it taken down.
Right, but it wasn't. He doesn't own the newspaper article, and he's not the person that placed the ad. So does he actually have that right? Like, I can understand if it's something he posted and he wanted it deleted. That's one thing. but deleting other people's stuff.
Yeah, well, what I worry about is, well, what happens now when China wants links removed, or the U.S. wants links removed, or Canada wants links removed. In fact, I think the Canada thing's already happening. This is just a really slippery slope. This isn't even like a slippery slope. This is like an iced slope.
Right, so that's why I was like, I can see wanting to remove stuff that I own, but it is like, if I own it, I can remove it myself usually, right?
Because it's on your own website?
Yeah, so, yeah. I can understand Google, me being able to request Google delete things they store about me, but not what other people do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
we'll have to see where that goes.
Yeah, I have a feeling
nowhere good, I'm sure.
I think we're going to be hearing more about that. All right. Attackers poison legitimate apps to infect sensitive industrial control systems. It's like an attack vector for SCADA systems?
So basically what they're doing, they found that certain SCADA systems are well secured and they're having trouble getting into them. So what they did was hack the websites of vendors that make other applications that those plants use and tack the malware onto that application. So if you remember, we talked about one like this in like South Korea. They hacked into this company that makes a toolkit that had like, a zip program and a file browser and stuff. And they tacked their malware into that so that it would then get into the South Korean government's computers.
Yeah.
So in this case, they infected some apps that are used by these plants. And then the infected app would then get inside the secure network and be able to infect the industrial control system and give them a secure a foothold in the secure network for things like power plants and I don't know, anything with industrial control systems. Any kind of plant, basically.
There's some research done by F-Secure. They say our research uncovered the 3 software vendor sites that were compromised in this manner. The software installers available on these sites were Trojanized to include the software. So, yeah.
Yep.
That's clever.
They don't mention the vendors, but...
No. Naked. Invisible to the naked eye, they say. Oh, yep. Windows. They're able to demonstrate how hard it is to spot the Trojans, too, F-Secure was. Huh. Yep. Good one. Good one. That's really interesting. Yeah, why not? Because if they're going to bring those computers into the network, it's your opportunity to get in. Yeah. All right.
It's a blessed app, basically.
It's
a piece of software that's supposed to be there.
A nation-state-sponsored attacker hacked 2 airports, a report says. I heard about this, Alan, but I didn't hear the details.
So, basically, they sent spear phishing emails to like 75 U.S. airports, and 2 of them...
2 of them bit?
Well, I think more than 2 clicked the link, but 2 of them actually ended up getting compromised, probably.
Yeah, of course.
There's not that much detail, as you can imagine. They're keeping things pretty hush-hush, but it definitely seems that phishing is still an issue.
They say that they've determined the operation was likely orchestrated with the help of public online document listing email addresses for the targeted airports. So they were able to find that information publicly and then target those people.
Send emails that look like things that an airport's supposed to receive, so people will click on them and open them.
And it's going right to the people, so it's probably not a part of like some huge CC or some big long list. They're kind of directed right at people.
And, when it looks like it's spear phishing, so, when it's something about airports or whatever.
Right, yeah.
Then
looks legit.
Exactly.
Speaking of looking legit, check out this picture of the Citibank ATM. For your convenience, it's located in the shady-looking van that drives around town. And it just parks, opens up the doors, puts the Citibank logo on there, and come get your money, people.
Yeah, and so you're like, well, this is definitely like a card skimming operation of some kind, right?
It's got.
Would you say so? Would you use that?
Yeah. Geez. All of the above. Take the money when they do deposits, grab their cards when they put their card in there, get their ID,
or just steal the PIN number.
Their PIN numbers. Yeah.
Actually, that's a legitimate Citibank ATM. It turns out there's a fire at the actual bank, and so this is parked outside the actual bank that is closed because there was a fire.
Okay, Alan, that is the most rundown, rickety-looking van I have ever seen, and you're telling me that is a legit Citibank van?
Apparently.
It's not even one color, Alan. It's like multiple colors. It's got rust on it, Alan. It's all rusted out. Oh, that's too funny. I
wouldn't use it, but apparently the comments mentioned that it was legitimate because the bank was closed temporarily because of a fire.
That's a good one. You guys, if you listen to the audio version, go check the roundup for a link to that picture. All right, Intel offering 3D printed, wait for it, robot kits.
Yes. So they have a couple of different kits starting at $1,500 and going to $16,000. So obviously these aren't for everybody just yet. But they're basically, I guess, a robot with an exoskeleton, and then you 3D print the rest of it to be how you want it, and you program it how you want it.
Nice.
Specifically, they use x86-based processors, so you can write software that you already know how to write and stuff, run operating systems that already work.
In fact, some of the robots use NUX.
Yep. And apparently, they're talking about these robots being able to do things like turn on lights, get the mail, things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, Intel wants to make a whole robot platform, basically, which is pretty neat.
Yeah, so they built the first kits to build a robot, which doesn't include everything. You 3D print most of it yourself or whatever. But they're mostly interested in getting people to start building the software for these.
It's a brave new world we're about to enter.
Mostly Intel's interested in having x86 as a platform and more embedded stuff.
So late last night, I was encoding video, and I was thinking to myself, this is the last 4-core computer I will ever buy. From now on, I think I'm going to at least have 12 cores, and that's already not enough. Because our next story is about a chip that has 36 cores.
Yeah. The big difference here is that rather than just scaling up the way we have been traditionally, like, I have a pair of 6-core processors with hyper-threading, so that adds up to 24 threads total on my machine in my basement. But in this one, instead of having some kind of bus or something, it actually has a routed network, and that's how it passes information between the 36 different cores.
MIT calls it a tiled processor.
Yeah, but it actually basically has like a miniature LAN inside the chip.
Wow.
And each core has an address, and they send messages through a router. And that's how they move data. And they apparently solved the biggest problem, which is how do you keep the cache coherent on all 36 cores? So when you make a change or invalidate data, that you're not keeping a cache of the old version on some other processor.
Yeah.
Apparently, they've solved that problem.
HP's working on something kind of like this too, only in their scenario, some of the cores and CPUs are more like FPGAs where they're very task specific. So it's
we talked about Intel introducing the Xeons,
right? Yes, we did. That's
on
right.
them last week.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Boy, it's not right now, but in 5 years or so, we're gonna have so many cool processor options. Like it's cool now.
I remember back before multiple cores was a thing.
Yeah.
AMD was talking about a machine with 8 sockets, and you'd have 4 regular processors in it, like you would a 4-way system now, and then your last 4 ones you would have a Java processor and an XML processor and
yeah. Well, about 7 years ago, I attended an Intel press conference where they brought us down, they wined and dined us, they gave us really, really good food, and then they brought us into this room and they introduced Chirp, and it was an initiative that Intel was pushing because one day, they said, kids gather around, one day we're going to have multiple cores, and essentially Intel said, we're not going to get the clock rate much higher than it is right now, so we're just going to do a whole bunch of cores, and one day you're going to have as many as 12 cores in one desktop, and we're starting to see that, but this 36 core, this is like nothing else.
Well, yeah, because that's been the interesting thing is that as soon as you get into the higher core counts, the clocks usually are much closer to 2 gigahertz than the old days of 4 gigahertz.
Right, yep.
And some of the dual core ones you can get at 3.6 gigahertz or something, but I don't think the 6 and 12 or 6 and 10 core processors are usually not clocked that high unless you're spending an extra 0 on the processor.
All right, well, why don't we talk about Red Hat's Assistant General Counsel having some thoughts on the decision concerning software patents made by the U.S. Supreme Court?
Yeah, so he's posted his analysis of their decision, and I think that if you go to the Slashdot story, they have a link to the actual decision, so you can read it yourself, and then see Red Hat's analysis of it.
Yeah, Rob Tiller is the guy's name. Yeah, yep. Rob Tiller. Yeah, they got Slashdot has the PDF linked. From the actual Supreme Court there, and then a link to his analysis. This is something that I've been seeing the community talk a lot about because Slashdot says it's a landmark decision, a groundbreaking decision is what they say about software patents. So it might be worth reading.
So, and because a lot of it's in legalese, having an analysis of it is quite helpful.
Yeah, very much. And Red Hat has a pretty good legal team. So.
And they're, pretty invested in software patents. So.
Yeah. Okay, Alan, our last story in the roundup this week, Intuit beats web encryption patent that defeated I guess Newegg was defeated over. I don't remember the Newegg trial, but I do remember
we talked about it a couple
kind of
months
vaguely.
Ago. But basically, there's this patent troll that's suing people that were using SSL with the RC4 cipher.
And Newegg was help us stop the patent troll. And,
so Newegg decided to stand up and not just roll over and pay. And they went so far as to have Whitfield Diffie, the guy that created half of the Diffie-Hellman key exchange that's used in SSL and SSH. as their expert witness, and somehow they still lost their jury trial.
Yeah.
Now, that one's still in like post jury deliberation or whatever they call it. They're filing motions back and forth and stuff. But anyway, so Intuit was faced off against this patent troll, and they managed to get it's like a higher up judge to sit at the lower court to hear the case.
Oh.
I forget how it works, what it's called. But they managed to win the case and have the patent thrown out. And so now with that decision behind them, all the other places that were lined up to be sued next or who had not already lost or paid looks like they might be able to get off the hook and not have to deal with it.
That's huge.
It's not clear. Newegg, although this decision doesn't necessarily help Newegg. They can try to appeal and stuff, but
okay.
The judge in the Newegg case doesn't have to follow the ruling of the judge from the Intuit case. And then Google was up next after Newegg, and they settled after Newegg lost. Yeah.
Come on, Googs, you got to go to the mat.
A different company owns the patent now. The guy that was running this scam sold it or something.
What a mess.
But after he made $46 million off suing people about stuff he didn't invent.
That's not broken at all. There's nothing wrong with that.
And almost nobody uses the RC4 thing anymore because it's known to be easily broken.
There you go. Go figure.
Yeah. It's one of the ones the NSA knows how to defeat.
And I guess according to the Ars Technica article, we don't know who that new owner is.
Yes. Which I think, it should be a law. If you're patent trolling me, who are you?
Yeah. No kidding. Goodness gracious, Alan. All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this week's Tech Snap. And
yes, it does.
Now, just because we recorded 2 episodes this week doesn't mean we won't be live next week. Actually, we will be live at our regular time, which is 1 p.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv, which works out to be
4 p.m. Eastern, 2000 UTC.
Boom. And also over at jblive.info if you want the audio-only stream. Don't forget, we also want your emails. Go over to jupiterbroadcasting.com. Click the contact link, choose TextNet from the drop-down, and send us in your questions. And then our monkeys on the back end will hand-deliver it to the correct recipients. We actually fly monkeys out to Alan's house every night, and they deliver a satchel full of your questions so that way we can answer them on the future episode of TextNet. We really work hard on your emails, so we want them.
Well, you heard the doorbell earlier, right?
Yeah, was that this episode? I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, there you go. So that was the monkeys. They were just a little late today because we were recording 2 episodes, and, well, they're monkeys. You can't expect a lot, right?
Exactly.
All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode of TechSnap. We'll see you right back here next week.